to the webinar. This online event supports our MSc in Financial Crime and Compliance in Digital Societies. So if you're considering to study with us, it's a great opportunity to find out more about the course, but also to ask us any questions you might have before you submit your application. So please do use the chat function and we'll go through everything at the end of the event. And if you are watching the webinar back, because I know a few people had emailed to say they'd like to attend today, but unfortunately due to the commitments that they're unable to attend live, please do send your questions through to the email address just at the bottom of the slide there, which is studyonline@manchester.ac.uk. So just in terms of the event today, next slide, please, Nick. Thank you. We're probably going to take around sort of 30 to 40 minutes of your time, and during which I'll run through a bit of information regarding our online student community. I'll then hand over to Professor Nicholas Lord, and he'll talk about the Department of Criminology here at the University of Manchester. And then we'll then go on to provide you with some information regarding the course structure and content. And this does include a bit of an insight session into some of the talk course material. So as I said, the purpose of the event is really to provide you with as much information as we can regarding the course, but also to offer insight into what you'll cover as a student when you join us. And as I mentioned, at the end of the event, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. So please do send them through, and as I said, we'll go through those. Just wanted to briefly look at our online student community here at the University of Manchester. So just a little bit about the university. So to start with, in the academic ranking of world universities, we are currently 5th in the UK, 9th in Europe and 35th in the world. We are a global institution as well, attracting over 44,000 students each year, and this is from undergrad to postgrad research. We currently have over 14,000 international students, and that's actually one of the highest international intakes of any UK university, and our online and blended community of students is thriving. So it's a really exciting time for those students who are currently studying with us, but also for those who are maybe planning to join us. So as a student at the as an online student at the University of Manchester, you will have access to the same support and resource as those students studying on campus. So although you'll predominantly be learning online, it doesn't mean that you'll be studying alone. So as well as the opportunity to engage with the course academics and your course peers, and that's both via the online learning environment, but also in this case through the practical masterclasses, you'll also have a dedicated study support advisor, as well as the opportunity to interact with those working in the various services available, such as library services, wellbeing services, technical support, and also the award-winning My Learning Essentials. I just wanted to briefly touch on My Learning Essentials because we do understand that a lot of people who join the course are working and maybe haven't studied for quite some time. So My Learning Essentials is unique to the University of Manchester, and it's designed to support you in many ways through your studies. So there's things like online workshops which you can join. You'll have access to resources to support you with referencing, dissertations, revision, presentations and academic writing. And what's also really important to know is that we offer library support 24/7 as well. So regardless of where you're based in the world, someone will be on hand to assist you with any questions you might have. The University of Manchester is placed as one of the UK's top research universities as well, with 93% of our research activity assessed as world leading or internationally excellent. And the quality of our research really does feed into the courses, many of which are designed to meet the needs of industry. So on that note, just to tell you a little bit more about the Department of Criminology, and also to go into a bit more detail regarding the MSc in Financial Crime and Compliance in Digital Societies, I'd like to hand over to Course Director, Professor Nicholas Lord.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Excuse me. So as Lisa mentioned, my name is Nick Lord. I'm a Professor of Criminology at the University of Manchester, and more specifically within the Department of Criminology. So let me just start by giving you a very brief background in terms of my research interests and my teaching portfolio, just so you have a feel of the kind of work that I'm involved in. Well, I joined the University of Manchester back in 2013, but prior to that, I was at Cardiff University as well. And throughout that time, so for the last 15 plus years now, I've been researching financial crime and compliance and regulation. More specifically, I've had strong interests in corruption and bribery in international commerce. So looking at the ways in which various governments and enforcement authorities go about dealing with companies that are otherwise lawful and legitimate, but are in some way implicated in corruption, whether it's the bribery of foreign public officials or perhaps commercial bribery, excuse me, entirely within the private sector. But also alongside those interests in corruption, essentially anything to do with white collar, or what we call white collar and corporate crime. And I'm sure these are terms that you are familiar with, but that is looking at otherwise legitimate occupational professionals to better understand why they may engage in non-compliant activities and financial crimes as well at the more serious end. So this could be various kinds of fraud, money laundering, and so on. And another interest of mine in terms of my research is organized crime and trying to better understand the organization of serious crimes for gain. So that involves thinking about the motivations of individual actors. Why do they get involved in excuse me, in crimes or non-compliance in the first place? Which conditions enable them to carry out their activities? How do opportunities arise within the business setting or within certain industries for certain kinds of crime or non-compliance as well? So essentially anything to do with issues around serious crime, financial crime, white collar crime is of interest to me. And these are things that I've been researching now for a number of years. And one final thing I will mention in terms of my current status, if you like, is that earlier this year, I took over as the director of the Centre for Digital Trust and Society at the University of Manchester, and also as the research theme lead for digital trust and security within the university. So in other words, this gives me oversight over all the research and teaching activities that are taking place within Manchester that have some kind of digital aspect to them. So whether it's fintech and regtech, or trusted digital systems, or privacy and anonymity, or cybercrime, of course, all these areas now fall within my remit. And as you will have guessed from the title of this program, being Financial Crime and Compliance in Digital Societies, that digital aspect is a key area that we would look at, or that we do look at on the program. And I'll share a bit more about that with you later as well. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Okay, so why study with us at the University of Manchester? I think Lisa's already given you quite a bit of material there around Manchester being a leading research intensive university, one of the strongest in the UK. And some of you may have heard of the Research Excellence Framework, and Lisa alluded to that as well. But essentially, this is a cyclical assessment of the quality of research that different institutions produce, and it's over a 7-year period, a 7-year cycle. And the latest iteration of the REF was announced this year, just a couple of months ago, and Manchester again performed incredibly well, being ranked 5th in the UK. 93% of our research was world leading or internationally excellent, as Lisa mentioned as well. So it's a really strong research environment. It's one of the UK's Russell Group universities, so cutting edge, state-of-the-art research is very much at the forefront of what we do in Manchester. And that also is the case within the School of Social Sciences and the Department of Criminology, where I'm based. So a few bits of information there for you on the screen about the Department of Criminology and the School of Social Sciences. That was rated 7th in the UK back in 2019. And just last year as well, just to give you another a kind of survey data set that often is used within the UK to assess, in this case, teaching excellence and not research excellence, but is the National Student Survey and other similar data sets. And last year in 2021, the Department of Criminology, where this program is based, was ranked 1st in the UK. So again, an incredible recognition of the quality of teaching and the research informed teaching that we do in the department. So it was really pleasing for us as a department to receive that ranking, and hopefully that gives you a bit of insight into the quality of materials and teaching experience that you would have, if you do join us in Manchester. And just to say a few things about the department as well, it's a very diverse department looking at a whole range of issues around crime and deviance and non-compliance, whether it's around motivations to commit crime, whether it's the creation of laws and regulations and the logic behind that, whether it's crime control policies and so on, crime reduction, crime prevention, and so on. We have an array of expertise within the department, but more specifically, and perhaps of more interest to you, is that we have a very strong group within the department focusing on financial crime, fraud, and other occupational or organizational non-compliance. And we have a research group called MONI, M-O-N-I, which is the Manchester Organizational Non-Compliance Initiative. And again, that might be something that you're interested in learning about if you do join us in Manchester. Okay, so I'm pretty sure you will be interested in learning a bit more about the course, its content and structure. And I would also think you are aware that the program or the course is a collaboration between the University of Manchester and the International Compliance Association. I'm sure many of you watching this will have obtained qualifications from the ICA, whether it's in money laundering or compliance, or some of the postgraduate certificates that are a precursor to this program. And that's a real innovative aspect to this program, in that on the one hand, you receive the cutting edge research that we as financial crime academics are carrying out in Manchester. We'll give you lots of insight into concepts, theories, advanced materials, empirical data around financial crime and compliance and regulation as well. But alongside this, you also have access to the ICA subject matter experts, their globally recognized standards, and so on. And in particular, at the practical masterclasses, which I'll talk about later, you'll also be taught by some of the ICA subject matter experts as well. So you can continue your relationship with those tutors from your time at the ICA. And the course, and again, you may be aware of this already, but it's targeted towards experienced professionals working in compliance, governance and regulation, and financial crime, perhaps more specifically as well. So the course is relevant for people who may be working as heads of compliance, heads of financial crime, heads of legal and compliance, chief compliance officers, compliance directors, compliance officers more generally, financial crime investigators, heads of professional standards. There's a whole array of governance and compliance roles for which this course is suitable. And if you do want more detail about that, feel free to ask us about it, or speak to your ICA colleagues as well, and they will be happy to speak to you about that as well. But the idea behind the program is that we can help you, we can introduce you to academic insights and robust materials to help you make a difference in the what is a very complex world of financial crime and compliance in digital societies. You'll gain very in-depth knowledge spanning all areas of expertise, from cybersecurity and the digital aspects of compliance, through to money laundering and specific forms of financial crime as well, in addition to theories or explanations of those behaviors. You'll have a very flexible and practical experience with the content and the course materials that will allow you to gain really valuable insight into the real world applications of the knowledge that you would acquire on the program. So much of the teaching and the tasks involved are geared towards enabling you or encouraging you to apply some of the more abstract theoretical conceptual materials to very specific compliance issues that you may come across in your workplace. You'll be able to develop advanced level knowledge on business risks and opportunities, and understand the structures of those opportunities so that you can perhaps design policies to intervene or prevent them from emerging within the first place. Recognize vulnerabilities within the business context and the workplace context in relation to data security, as well as new technologies that are being integrated into strategic decision making and compliance responses. So for instance, RegTech, FinTech, compliance tech, and so on, SupTech, all these new techs that we now have emerging that can play a role in making the compliance processes more efficient and effective. And of course, beyond the actual learning materials, you also get the opportunity to network and collaborate with your course peers, exchanging good practice or best practice examples, sharing experiences from your own workplace or your own jurisdictions as well. And what we find is that the profile of the student cohort is very diverse. So we have people from across the globe in various jurisdictions. So it's always really insightful and fascinating to bring people together and hear about, say, the common issues that might arise in very diverse places, but also how there may be mechanisms or tools that you can implement that will nonetheless be effective, despite the cultural differences that might exist across these different places. And finally, the studying on the program, allows you to be part of a very exclusive cohort, stand out and gain credibility. Currently, the program is closed to graduates of the ICA only. So again, this is a targeted program for people such as yourself who have been working in this area for some time, and it allows you to gain access to the program, which is something that not everybody currently can do. Okay, so on to the course content then. So as I mentioned a moment ago, a precursor to joining us at Manchester on this program is the completion of the ICA's postgraduate certificates, either in financial crime, compliance, and so on. And that essentially represents 60 credits towards your master's, which is a top-up of your ICA qualification. So the standard credit level in Manchester for a master's program is 180 credits. So 60 credits constitute your ICA qualifications, which means we have to make up another 120 credits during your time at Manchester. That is done through 4 units. Units 1, 2, and 3 are 20 credit modules, which each take place over a 10-week period. And I'll say some more about that in a moment. And then the unit 4, which is the dissertation project, is a 60 credit unit, and that constitutes the remaining third of your program. So, first of all, in terms of unit 1, compliance and financial crime risk analysis and explanation, I'll very briefly just give you an overview of what we cover in each of the units, but given the time constraints, I won't have time to go into too much detail. But in the first unit, we start off by looking at how we conceptualize financial crime and compliance. Again, this may be some material that you're aware of from your time with the ICA, but we go into a much more in-depth, deeper dive, if you like, into some of the concepts and theories that exist within academia to help us understand those risks. We'll then move on to think about explanations at multiple levels of analysis. So first of all, thinking about individuals and whether or not there are some kind of individual level factors that might determine whether somebody engages in non-compliance or not. That might be something psychological, biological, or it might be about the decisions that individual people make under certain conditions. And of course, we then go on to think about the meso level of analysis, if you like, looking at the organizational context, analyzing decisions through the lens of the culture of the organization to understand how certain factors or policies or structures that exist within business settings can in some way be conducive to forms of non-compliance. And then we also look at the macro level as well. So thinking about the wider industry context or the regulatory environment and landscape, to think about the interaction between those different levels of analysis so we can properly understand and build more convincing explanatory accounts, if you like, of why it is that certain businesses or individuals do get involved in financial crime or non-compliance. And also in this module, we introduce you to some methods of analysis that we use in Manchester in our research to better understand the nature or the commissioning of different forms of non-compliance. So for instance, we introduce you to script analysis and social network analysis, which allows us to build a picture of the process of non-compliance over time, thinking about the different scenes or stages that involved actors have to go through to accomplish their non-compliant objectives or their financial crime objectives. So that's pretty much Unit 1. In Unit 2, we then go on to think about the digital underpinning of various forms of financial crime and compliance. So we start off by thinking about the foundations of interconnected systems, the emergence of the internet and various networks and so on, before thinking about the dark net and the extent to which these external threats might pose compliance risk to your business or to your organization. And of course, that implies a requirement to understand also the cybersecurity features of your business. So in the module, we look at the interaction or the dynamics between compliance and cybersecurity. And we then go on to think about more specific tangible examples like the use of regulatory technologies or financial technologies in relation to financial crime and in relation to your business response to compliance risks as well. And throughout both units, we also drew upon a number of case studies like anti-money laundering and illicit finance or corruption, and even things like modern slavery and the issues around corporations perhaps enabling or engaging in various forms of labor exploitation and those kinds of things as well. And then the third unit, where we look at data, evidence, and intelligence on financial crime and compliance. So again, the key purpose here is, well, there are two core objectives with this module. One is to provide you with some preparation for the dissertation project, because we recognize that some of you may not be familiar with what a dissertation looks like, or it may have been some time since you actually carried out a larger piece of research or empirical work for a dissertation. So we in those terms, we introduce you to how to identify researchable empirical questions around compliance, how you can develop a coherent and cohesive research strategy, research design for your dissertation and your own research within your organization, which kinds of methods you may wish to utilize to generate data or observations of compliance issues to inform the researchable question that you've identified, and other factors such as the ethics and limitations of research as well. So there's a bit of overlap between Unit 3 and the dissertation in that we provide those fundamentals or foundations of research. But also in Unit 3, we introduce you to other key issues, such as how to make sense of compliance data that you may come across in your workplace, or how to make sense of data generated by other organizations, whether it's Transparency International, for instance, and the corruption indices that they put together. To what extent can we truly say that those data are reliable and credible? Well, on this unit, we'll teach you how to examine and interrogate those data sets. And it might be that you then conclude that there are some, or significant concerns around the generation of data for those projects, which perhaps in turn enable inferences to be made, which may not reflect reality. So we encourage you to be critical of data, to better understand these data and think about the implications of those data for your workplace activities as well. And we also look at intelligence. So as part of the masterclass, for instance, that I mentioned in a moment, somebody will come in and speak to you about gathering intelligence on particular compliance issues, whether it's identifying the assets that may belong to a politically exposed person operating in the UK and other countries or other jurisdictions as well. So how do you go about undertaking those intelligence-oriented approaches? And then in Unit 4, the dissertation projects, we have 3 pathways within this project, within this unit, depending on what your preference is. You can choose to do a more traditional dissertation where you would complete on your own a 12 to 15,000 word piece of work that would involve some empirical research, around a compliance issue or a financial crime issue that you've identified to be pertinent to your workplace activities. You may choose to do a short dissertation. If you're not entirely comfortable with the long dissertation format, you can do a shorter version whereby you would have essentially half the word count, so around 6,000 to 8,000 words. Still quite an extended piece of writing, but alongside that, you would also carry out some smaller research-oriented units to give you a bit more training in undertaking research as well. And the third option we have is the group dissertation. So you might find, and we find this on the program, that you have very close or common interests with other students on the course. And you may therefore choose to work together as a group of 3 to 5 people to carry out a group dissertation project, where you would generate data for use by the entire team, but there would also be individual components to that as well, so we can assess your individual contribution alongside the group contribution as well. Okay, so that's pretty much the 4 units, if you like, on the course. And alongside these, we have 3 practical masterclasses. So in terms of the learning pedagogy or the learning style, in terms of how that works, the program is blended or online with some offline components, whereby in terms of a weekly contribution, you would essentially be required to look at the online learning materials on our online learning environment called Blackboard, work your way through the textual materials. There will be tasks for you to complete. There'll be discussion board requests. There'll be some videos for you to watch and other interactive tasks as well. And that takes place, well, there are 8 weeks of online learning materials with 2 weeks of either consolidation or revision, where you can just take the time to reflect on what you've done or revise certain things that you wish to look into in more depth, or even catch up if that's what you need to do. But alongside that online learning, we also have 1 masterclass per unit for the first 3 units, where you're invited to come to Manchester for the weekend. So it runs through Friday afternoon through to a Sunday morning. And at these masterclasses, you'll hear from myself and our financial crime research team in Manchester. So my colleague, Dr. Katie Benson, is the co-program director for this program, but also experts from industry and other organizations, from enforcement, regulators, from private sector, and so on, just to help you enhance your own compliance work. And again, these are a really great opportunity for you to meet in person as well, of course. So what I thought I may do at this point is just give you a brief look at the first week's materials for our first unit on compliance and financial crime risk, and just to give you a flavor of the kind of thing that we look at. Whoops. Okay. So Lisa, can you just confirm that you can see the materials there?
I can see the materials there, yes.
Okay, good. So, when you join the Blackboard page or our on learning environment, this is the kind of thing that you would see. So, a mixture of text materials, video materials, that's myself and Katie Benson, my colleague, and lots of information about the units and the learning outcomes, the assessment, of course, as well, which I'm sure some of you may have questions about. And the assessment does vary across the first 3 units, a mixture of essay type writing approaches, PowerPoint presentations, shorter commentaries or tasks, multiple choice questions as well in the second unit. But I won't get into too much detail about that now. But essentially on the home page for each unit, you have lots of information and guidance around how to approach the learning experience. And of course, access to the reading list as well. But let me just go into the week 1 materials for unit 1. And this is the kind of thing that you would encounter. So first of all, an introduction from myself or Katie around the core objectives of the week's materials, as well as the learning objectives and what we think you will get by the end of the section in terms of, usually we aim to share with you 3 key learning outcomes, as you can see on the screen. We then move into the core materials for the week. And as you can see, it's a mixture here of textual materials where we share with you insights from the academic world. We touch upon core concepts. So again, what is financial crime is something that you probably are quite familiar with in terms of your own workplace practice, but it might be that you've, up until this point, not had access to the wide array of academic work that exists on the topic. So we do refresh your memories, if you like, around what financial crime is, and touch upon some academic work to introduce you to so for instance here, the conceptual origins of financial crime. And then, so alongside the textual materials that you are required to read through, there'll also be videos interspersed at key points to help reinforce your learning. So we can click on these. I'm not entirely sure whether this will work, but you can just get a sense of the kind of thing that you will be watching.
In this short video, we'll look at the conceptual origins of the term financial crime. On the streets towards...
Yeah, I won't play that entire thing, but you can just get a feel for the kind of materials there. So, this is quite a basic introduction to financial crime, reflecting on the origins of the term financial crime from white-collar crime, and this idea that we decollared the white-collar offender to think about financial crime, which in turn broadens out the remit as well. You'll then be given short tasks, such as to think, in this case about the evolution of white-collar crime, where you watch the video, spend a few minutes thinking about the concepts or the ideas from the videos as well, before we then move on to some more textual materials, some more video content as well. And then again, also interspersed with the materials or guided readings at key points in the text. So when we would like you to move away from the online learning materials to access the reading list available online, and then read through a key chapter or a journal article that we think would really enhance your learning around the particular topic that we're looking at. Again, so you can get a feel for the kind of materials here. There are some interactive aspects to the learning materials as well, where you can click and learn more about certain ideas or concepts. And each week as well, we always include a discussion task. And on the online learning environment, there's a discussion section where you can share your ideas, your thoughts with your peers on the course, and then engage in a discussion around a particular issue. So in this case, we look at categories of financial crime, thinking about whether a certain instance of financial crime that you may have encountered in your experience or workplace perhaps falls outside of some of the categorizations that we've provided you with on the course. And that in turn provides a starting point for a discussion with us as your course leaders, but also with your peers on the course as well. And as I mentioned, some interactive elements. So, why is the term financial crime often thought of as a fuzzy concept? So an opportunity here for you to think about that question, and the materials are all available in the online content. So the answers are there, and then you can click to find out what the answer to that would be. And at the end of each week, we have the references as well. So that's pretty much what the materials look like. And then you simply click through into the second week, where we then look at compliance and what we call the governance turn. So the shift towards responsibilizing private sector or non-state actors and authorities and organizations to essentially represent the front line of certain kinds of policing activities, like with anti-money laundering and so on. And again, as you'll see, that's my colleague Katie Benson, a similar kind of process: learning outcomes, introduction, and then into the learning materials, which is that mixture of text, video, tasks, and discussion type activities. Okay, so yeah. So there we are. Okay, so in terms of the structure then, I mentioned that there are 4 units and the program takes place over a 12-month period. And in this case, in terms of your cohort, that will be starting in September 2022, where you will begin with Unit 1. Each of the first 3 units, well, all 4 units run consecutively. So you complete Unit 1 over a 10-week period, have a short break, move on to Unit 2. There may be longer breaks in there with the Christmas period or the Easter period as well, or the summer period, of course. And the first 4 weeks always involve the teaching through those online learning materials that you saw. Week 5 is a consolidation week where we also have the 3-day masterclass. So it's a chance for you to come and meet your peers and meet your course leaders and pose any questions that you might have about the materials in the structured weekends that we prepared for you. You then go back onto the online learning materials, and week 6 to 9 introduce you to further new materials before week 10, where you revise and work on your assessments, which are then submitted at the end of that 10-week period. So that's the same for units 1, 2, 3. With the dissertation unit, there is some overlap between the starting of the unit and unit 3, given the commonalities around research principles and the foundations of undertaking research. So it's geared towards preparing you for that unit 4, if you follow me. And at that point as well, in unit 4, you're also introduced to your supervisors, those academics who will guide you on your dissertation journey and be available to speak to you about your ideas and refining those and preparing research for those as well. Okay, so that pretty much covers it from my side in terms of the program, how the course is run, the structure, the materials. Is there anything else, Lisa, that you think I need to cover there, or has that pretty much touched upon everything?
I think that touched on everything. That was really insightful. Thank you very much. We've had a couple of questions as well come through, which we'll go through in just a moment. But just as you can see on the slide there, the sort of next course start date we have is September. We are accepting applications, however, places are limited. So if you are considering to study with us, please don't leave it sort of too close to the application deadline date, which is usually around the beginning of August. As I said, we've got a cap on the amount of places we can offer. So if you're considering to study, maybe you have some questions you want to talk through, then please just arrange a consultation with myself. You can do that just by emailing through to the Study Online inbox. And as I said, if you've got any additional questions, then obviously please do let us know, and I can put those to Nick as well. So as I said, accepting applications now. It's an exciting time to join our online community, and as I said, the feedback from the current cohort that we have students is really positive regarding the course as well, which is wonderful to hear. So it'll be exciting this weekend, Nick, isn't it? You've got your one of the practical masterclasses in Manchester.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so tomorrow morning people should be arriving in Manchester, starting tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. We'll kick off with some coffee and cake, perhaps, before moving into the materials for the weekend. And of course, when you do come to Manchester, we'll take you out for a meal on the Friday and Saturday evening, and give you that opportunity to informally mix with your peers and your course leaders, but also see Manchester, the city as well. I mean, as you can see behind me, obviously this is not a real-time video. It's kind of a virtual backdrop, but it's a beautiful city on a nice sunny day. And this weekend is due to be very sunny as well. So, our students are in for a treat as they come to Manchester.
And it's meant to be really nice on Friday, so it's tropical, I believe, bordering on anyway. So exciting times ahead for the masterclass. It'd be really great to see everyone together, and as I said, it's a fantastic course to network as well, which we know is really important for the students. So just some questions that have come through then. We've got a question regarding the assessment. So does each unit have 3 assessments?
Yes, it's a good question. No is the answer. So the first unit has those 3 assessments that you saw on the screen when I was working through the learning materials. And that involves, it's broken down in terms of a 25% for the first assessment, where you identify a case study for analysis during the course of that unit. from your own workplace practice or something that's you've become aware of from the media, from an enforcement action. So that's 25%. The next 25% is a presentation of an analysis of that case study that you've identified and for analysis. And then 50% of the units, that third assessment, is a critical reflection on the analytical process, whereby you can reflect about what you did in the first two assessments. You can reflect on the findings of your analysis for your workplace compliance practice as well. So that's the first unit, those three sections. In Unit 2, the assessment process is quite a bit different in that you have weekly assessments. So the 8 weeks of learning materials, each has its own assessment component, and each of those constitutes that 12.5% of the final grade. And that takes two forms. Either it's a short 500-word commentary on a key idea or issue from the materials for that week, or it involves a few multiple choice questions and a shorter 200-word textual response to a particular question. And the latter of those two assessments, so the multiple choice question and the textual response, is a timed assessment. So you have an hour to complete that. So that's Unit 2 assessment. And then in Unit 3, it would be a more traditional academic piece of work where you submit a 4,000-word research proposal based on the methods and skills that you've learned on the course, but you apply that towards a certain compliance issue that you wish to look into in more depth in the dissertation. So it's essentially preparation for that dissertation project, which is quite a significant piece of work. So they do vary across the 3 units, and we do that because we're trying to be flexible and allow you to work in your own time. We recognize that you're all professionals with full-time positions, and it can be hard to find the time to engage in your assessment. So we also split the assessments up over the course of the unit to again give you that flexibility. So that's pretty much it. And then the dissertation is, on the one hand, quite traditional if you want to do that individual long dissertation, but the short dissertation and the group dissertation are slightly different.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nick. We've just had a question as well, which I can happily answer, just regarding whether the course will take place again next year. This year, for 2022, we did have an intake in February and September. However, going into 2023, it will only be September. So if you are, as I said, considering to study with us, thinking about this September, but then you were thinking of pushing it back, unfortunately we won't have an intake in February. So as I said, it's either this September or we'll be accepting applications for September 2023. I had another question here. I've got some Q&As as well. Hi, will all of the week's content be available at the beginning of the unit?
Yes, so it's all available online. You can essentially work through it at your own pace. Whilst we've suggested that you undertake it on a weekly basis, if you prefer, you can, really go hard at it for get 3 weeks worth of materials in 1 week. If you have a few days off, that's fine. You can do that. But just to try and spread it out, we recommend that you do it on that weekly basis. But yes, to answer the question, all the materials are available at the start.
I think that kind of links to another question that actually came through as well, Nick. If you miss a week due to work commitments such as travel, what would happen? But again, I guess you sort of answered that. It's up to the students how they sort of study, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And built into the weekly materials as well, or the unit, sorry, we have those consolidation weeks and the revision week at the end. So there's a week in the middle where you can just, well, if you need to use it to catch up, that's fine, you can do that. Or you can use it to get ahead as well. If you are going to be away for a week, you can go into the week after, look at those materials. So if you do miss a week due to work, and this is common, what we find with our professionals is that they're all very busy. And, to give you an example of that, sanctions against Russian oligarchs and so on really created an increased workload for many of our students this year on the course. So, in that case, it was a matter of, trying to catch up when they could. And, even in some cases, if you need an extension to the submission deadlines for the assessments, we can look at that as well. Again, recognizing that you're all very busy people. So we can do what we can to support you there.
Thank you. Another question that came through just in regards to the practical masterclasses. Obviously, we've got someone interested in studying with who's based in Chad in Central Africa, and given the cost involved in travelling to the UK and, as we said, work commitments, is it mandatory to attend the masterclasses in person?
No, it's not mandatory, but it's what is the wording? Strongly encouraged or recommended. So we can't force you to come to Manchester to participate in person, but we really do encourage that.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, the masterclasses will be live streamed if you are unable to attend, but as Nick said, we really do encourage you, because it's a great networking opportunity as well, isn't it, for everybody to meet, as everybody ends up working quite closely together. So I said not mandatory, but if you can, obviously we'd totally encourage that. Someone's asked us about scholarships. At the moment, I don't believe we've got any scholarships for the programme, so I said if you can secure some support possibly from your employer. I said it is designed to support industry as well, so unfortunately no scholarships at the moment. And just a final question is just, are there plans to have this course go full-time? And again, someone's just asked about the post-study visa after taking the course, but I think just for now, any plans for the course to go full-time, Nick?
Not currently. So we kind of continue with this 12-month process, which essentially is a full-time master's equivalent time, if you see what I mean. If you were to do a part-time master's, it would be over a 2-year period, usually in Manchester or at any other institution. So, we do it in a 12-month period to try and, make sure that it's a timely process for you as students as well.
There's one final quick question that's come through. Is this course fully in online mode? Well, as Nick had said, it is just an online and blended course. So yes, predominantly you'll be learning online, but then as we said, we do offer the masterclasses as well, which brings that a blended element to the course.
Yeah, and just to add to that as well, so yeah, it's blended in that we have the masterclass and the online learning materials, but we also have weekly, what we call consultation hours, where you can come and speak to myself or Katie during a specified time slot to discuss the course or any concerns or ideas that you might have. So you can speak to us on a regular basis.
Thanks, Nick. And we've just had a couple of questions come through as well, which I'll just quickly address. Just regards to eligibility for the course, you are required to hold one of the ICA PG DIPs prior to submitting application. As Nick said, it's all based on the credits that you would hold already from the ICA PG DIP, and then obviously what you need to then undertake to build that up to an MSc. So at the moment, it's classed as what we call a closed cohort, and as I said, it is just for those who have studied the ICA PG DIPs. However, we understand there's a lot of experienced people out there who are equally as keen to apply, so please do keep in contact with us and we can let you know if there's any changes with the programme at all. But as I said, for now you would need to study one of the ICA PG DIPs, and all that information as well is available on the website. So there's links back to the ICA web pages where you can obviously, if you are interested in undertaking their programmes as well, you can obviously access them there as well. But yeah, that's been a fantastic session, Nick. Thank you very much. I hope everybody's enjoyed that today and found it really insightful. As I said, as you can see from the slides as well on screen, we are accepting applications for September. If you'd like to talk through any of the information covered in today's event, or if you'd like to speak to myself in regards to your application, then please don't hesitate to email me, and as I said, we can arrange a call to discuss. But thank you for attending, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa.